Are you ready for the second day of 10 Women of the Bible? We're still doing the series on Sarah, and I don't know if you, there's 10 women, and each of these 10 women have 5 days of study. And so I don't know if you want to do like all 50 days together, or you want to get the book and we'll do the first section of the woman, and then you do the 5 days, and we'll meet up once a week to talk about that whole thing. I'm not sure, but we're going to do the second one today. Yesterday we started on Sarah, right? Sarai, and we did the first day's study. Today is called day 2, and it's called helping God. Have you ever wanted to just help God? Oh boy, he doesn't need our help, does he? And so Max Lucado, the author of this book, gives an example of wouldn't it be nice if someone paid off all your credit card debt or any debt that you have, that all month long you could rack up bills and rack up bills and rack up bills, and you go to pay your debt and it's like, what do you mean it's already paid? There's a zero balance. Somebody came in and paid your debt. How about that? And he says, that's the way the Lord does things, but we have to be able to accept that. And he's been doing it for years. And we don't always believe that the Lord will do that, and we get in the way and try to take care of things that he's already paid for, right? Well, I'll come to you, Lord, after I change this about myself. I'll come to you, Lord, after I make that right. Well, he already paid for that, so you don't have to do that. I'm trying to get this glare off my glasses. I hope it doesn't bother y'all. I can't see this without them. Okay, so Abraham, well, it was still Abram and Sarai at this time, certainly had their share of racking up charges that needed remittance, right? One of the biggest ones was when they lied to the Egyptians. They told them that Sarai was his sister instead of his wife, out of fear of the Egyptians, thinking because she was so beautiful they would kill him and take her. I wouldn't want to hang out with those Egyptians if that's how they were, but anyway, they didn't trust the Lord to protect them and provide for them during that time of famine, right? So then Sarai finally said to Abram, and this is from Genesis 16:2-3, she said, see, the Lord has restrained me from bearing children. It's been all these years. It's not going to happen, Abram. He gave us that promise, or you said he did. I don't have a child, and here I am getting older, and you're getting older. I want you to go into my maid. Perhaps she'll have children for you, and we'll have an heir. Now, what did Abram do? He took Hagar right in his tent and did exactly what Sarah said. That's Genesis 16:2-3. What was the result? It was disaster. We still have conflict today that started with Isaac and Ishmael. There is still conflict today from that. So if you read Genesis chapter 16, and this says right down the charges that Abram and Sarai rack up, why do you think Sarai decided to help God's plan in those passages? And based on Abram's response, what desires did he have to help God's plan as well? Just as we said, Sarai thought, we had this promise, but all this time has passed and it didn't happen. So maybe it would get in your head, well, maybe I'm not doing my part with what God said he would do. Maybe I need to do something to help God. It's not true. You know if God's directing you to do something, or if it's you, probably. If you're not sure, don't do it till you are sure. And then what did Abram do? He did exactly what Sarai asked him to do. Now, was it, I look at this in 2 ways. Was it because he was sick of hearing her nag about it and complain about it? Or maybe he wanted to try to fulfill that longing in her to mother. I don't know if when in that day and time, if their slave had a baby, would she have been able to parent that baby? Maybe she thought she would parent Ishmael. I don't know. I also know that the women depended on men to take care of them and their sons to take care of them. Maybe she thought then, if this was Abram's son, when he passed away, as he was 10 years older than her, maybe she thought he would be there to take care of her and she wouldn't be without, right? I don't know. The scripture doesn't tell us what her thinking was, but you wonder. There's our Bible study partner behind me, Kitty. Number 2, think about a time when you took control of a situation instead of entrusting it to God? What were some of the results of that decision? Sarai believed taking over would fix the problem, according to Genesis 16, verse 2, and this gave her a false comfort. What false comforts tag along with control? So I think when you get in, you want something to happen because something or anything means it's moving. I think when we're in the waiting phase of a promise from God or a direction from God, we get antsy and we get anxious and we let that doubt come in. And so seeing something happen or anything at all happen sometimes gives you a false sense of trust and accomplishment and a false sense of satisfaction, right? Thinking, okay, I can check that off my list when really you've made your list incredibly longer with the problems. The result of not waiting on God comes to fruition. And so number 3 says, it had been 10 years since Abram and Sarai had picked up and left all they knew to follow this promise of God. Sarai's hope and patience were wearing thin, as we just said, and she was beginning to cast blame. Who do you see her blame in Genesis 16? Let me read this to you. Sarai said to Abraham in 16, verse 5, "You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she, now that she knows she's pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me." Sarai, this was your plan and your decision, and there you are blaming Abram for doing exactly what you told him to do. That verse always gets me. She says, "May the Lord judge between me and thee." Well, maybe Abram should have had more self-control or better judgment, but certainly she was the one that devised that idea, I believe. And now, verse 4 said, read Proverbs 3, 5 through 7 and James 1, 6 through 8. Which passage best describes Sarai in Genesis 16? Why this cat is aggravating me. And why? In Isaiah 26, 3, how does the prophet encourage us to avoid doubt and control and have a heart of peace and trust? Isaiah 26, 3 says, you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. We have to keep our mind on the Lord. So let's go to Proverbs 3, 5, and 7. I could quote part of that. Whoops, my Bible's upside down. I was like, that didn't look right. Proverbs 3, 5, and 7. That kitty is being ornery today. I have a cat that thinks she's the queen. I'm so sorry. I should have had this marked so it wasn't not taking up your time. Proverbs 3, 5 through 7. Trust in the Lord with all thy heart and lean not into thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Here's verse 7 is the keeper. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. So Sarai made some decisions that she thought in her own mind were wise and right, but it's not what the Lord said would happen, right? And then James 1, 6 through 8. I've got so many things that I love in my Bible. My kids make me something. I just hang on to it. Well, opens. My Bible's not cooperating. My goodness. My pages are even sticking together. Hang on. Look, I've got so many things in there. It's fun. Why is that not working? My word. They're sticking together. Here we go. James 1, what did we say? 6 through 8. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering, for he that wavereth waves, is like a wave of the sea driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. We either trust God or we don't, right? It's so important. And then, like I said, Isaiah 26:3, you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. We have to trust the Lord. You know, our associate pastor preached Sunday, and it's easy to trust God when everything's going great. But what about when he tells you to step out and walk on the water? Walk to him. That's scary, right? And then even when you have enough courage to step out and you think, start letting that doubt come in, you start sinking, you have to get your eyes back on the Lord, and he'll pull you up. So there we go. Okay, in need of a little grace is some more of this. So after Abram had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar and she conceived. That's Genesis 16:3-4. Abram and Sarai now have an heir. But it isn't the heir that God intended. They have gone outside of God's plans, and pretty soon things began to unravel. Hagar started to despise Sarai. You know, was she despising because she was used for Sarai to have gain? Was she despised because she was pregnant, not by a man that she loved? I don't know what it was, but the Bible says clearly she began to despise. And Sarai started to despise Hagar. You think it was jealousy? Probably. Abram is caught in the middle. It got so bad that Abram finally gave up trying to work it out. He said to her, "Indeed, your maid is in your hand. Do to her as you please." Abram, you didn't protect the woman that was carrying your baby. There you go. Oh, I hear raindrops. There goes my plans, and that's okay. I like this better. In many ways, strange as it may seem, Sarai's humanness is refreshing. Should you ever need a reminder of God's tolerance, you'll find it in Sarai's story. If you ever wonder how in the world God could use you to change the world, just look at that couple. They bumbled all over the place. They made a lot of bad decisions. But Abram also made one for his family that changed everything. According to Romans 4:3, he trusted, and this is the Message version, he trusted God to set him right instead of trying to be right on his own. That's so important. Because of this, God offered grace to both Sarai and Abram in spite of their faults and their missteps. He credited their charge account and covered their debts, right? And then he goes on to talk about his father giving him a lesson. Question number 5. What are the negative results of Sarai's decision to step outside of God's plan, both relationally and emotionally? I cannot imagine how it would be to look at another woman pregnant with your husband's child, particularly when you yourself are barren. That had to have messed her up. She already had some emotional, having gone through infertility myself. There are a lot of things that make you feel less of a person. And in those days, barrenness was considered to be a curse in many areas. So I don't know. I'm sure it was bad. And you know, with her having all those negative feelings, it certainly would have played havoc on her relationship with her husband, but let alone on her relationship with her maid, Hagar. I'm sure it was terrible for all of them. Okay, number 6. How did Abram react to Sarai's decision, and how do you think he should have responded? How can you help a friend or relative who is trying to take control or manipulate God's plan? This is really good. How did he react to Sarai's decision? He caved. He did what she wanted. How do you think he should have responded? He should have said, "No, we have a promise from God," and nowhere in that promise did God tell me there would be a third person involved, right? He didn't do that. He listened. Maybe it's because he loved her so much and wanted to ease the pain, or I don't know. There's things we could infer here and we don't know. How can you help a friend or relative who's trying to take control or manipulate God's plan? If you have someone, a friend or relative, that said to you, "God told me this, God showed me this, here it is in the Word, here's where it was confirmed, here's what I know," and then you see them stepping out of that, it's time to act. It's time to act. Puppy, do you need out? I've got an old dog that, excuse me.